డాక్టర్ సూరజ్ జంగ్డే గారు హైదరాబాద్లో ఉంటున్నారు 2-3 రోజుల నుంచి. సో వారు వచ్చిన సందర్భంగా మన తెలుగునాడు శ్రోతలకి వారి గురించి కొంత పరిచయం చేయాల్సిన అవసరం ఉందని చెప్పేసి ఈ ప్రోగ్రాం పెట్టడం జరిగింది. సూరజ్ జంగ్డే గారు బేసిక్గా ఆయన అంబేద్కర్ శిష్యుడు, అభిమాని, ఒక స్కాలరు. చాలా పవర్టీ లెవెల్స్ నుంచి పైకి వచ్చినాడు. అతను ఎలా పైకి వచ్చాడు, ఇంటర్నేషనల్ స్కాలర్ ఎలా అయ్యాడు అనే విషయాల్లోకి మనం వారిని అడిగి తెలుసుకుందాము ఆయన మాటల్లోనే. నమస్కారం సూరజ్ గారు. నమస్కారం.
నమస్కారం సార్.
ఐఎమ్ wanting you to tell the audience of these 2 Telugu states about what you are and who you are. What's your background like? What is the social and economic background of your ancestors, your parents, grandparents, and earlier generations, if you remember some of those incidents? నేను సూరజ్ జంగ్డే గారు రాసిన క్యాస్ట్ మ్యాటర్స్ అనే పుస్తకం ఒకటి చదవటం జరిగింది. ఆయన ఈ పుస్తకం 2019లో హైదరాబాద్లోనే లా మకాన్లో రిలీజ్ చేయడం జరిగింది. ఆ రిలీజ్ ఫంక్షన్కి నేను ఐలయ్య గారు అటెండ్ అయ్యి మాట్లాడాము. ఆ బుక్లో తను ఎట్లాంటి పరిస్థితుల్లో ఉన్నాడనేది చాలా పూర్ బ్యాక్గ్రౌండ్ వచ్చిన నాకే వింత అనిపించింది. ఆయన నాందేడ్లో ఒక స్లమ్లో ఉండేవారు. ఆ స్లమ్లో టిన్ రూఫ్ స్లమ్ అన్నమాట, రేకులతో చేసినటువంటి ఒక్క రూము ఉన్నటువంటి హౌస్ అది. అది ఎంత చిన్నదంటే వాళ్ళ ఫ్యామిలీ మెంబర్స్ 6 ఉండేవాళ్ళు. మదరు, ఫాదరు, గ్రాండ్ మదరు, బ్రదరు, సిస్టరు. ఆ 6 ఆ గదిలో పడుకోవాలనుకున్నప్పుడు 2 మంచం మీద పడుకునేవాళ్ళు, 2 మంచం కింద పడుకునేవాళ్ళు. మిగిలిన 2కి పడుకునేంత ప్లేసే ఉండేది ఆ టిన్ షెడ్లో. ఆ పరిస్థితి నుంచి ఈ రోజుని ఇంటర్నేషనల్ స్కాలర్ అయ్యారంటే ఆయనలో ఏదో ఒక విశేషం కనిపిస్తుంది. ఆ విశేషాలు వారినే అడిగి మనం వారి మాటల్లోనే విందాం. మిస్టర్ జంగ్డే, ఐ జస్ట్ వాంటెడ్ టు ఇంట్రడ్యూస్ యూ టు ది తెలుగు ఆడియన్స్ and see what you are and who you are. I would like to start with this information that we would like to know from you. What's the social and economic background of your ancestors?
First of all, thank you so much, Madhurao sir, for arranging this conversation. I met the founder of Sneha TV at Ms. Bhagyarao and was very pleased with knowing his updates and his kind of work. And so many a times I've been quite inspired. We just eliminated one difficulty in our life right now. Thank you so much for organizing this conversation and hosting this. I'm really looking forward to the next hour of conversation that we've been having so far. The memory of my ancestors is absent. We don't know. And it didn't matter to me as much. But when I left India and when I went to America, there was strong insistence and people having a ancestral record, 5 generations, 6 generations, and it's written down. And then I thought, what about my story? I only know about my grandfather, and he died when I was young. So I didn't have the opportunity to talk to him about his grandfather. And when I was conscious, I wanted to ask my grandmother about her. And she shared some memories about, I think, whatever era she was born in, she just didn't know. And it didn't matter because she was anyway going to join the landlord's field. And even though she was a loved daughter of the parents, the situation of the household was such that she had to go and work. And so my grandfather's father allegedly left his native place from Nanded. It is very nearby, about some small taluk place, and I went to investigate that history just this summer. So people gave different kinds of histories. I gave his name. So one version is, now I don't know if it's a truth version, but it is a version, because his daughter, my grandfather's sister, who's alive, told me that he had come here to work in the migration that happened from rural areas. And so he left the village where he was working on someone's field. And so many a times what we see in the story is that my grandfather was a urban born. He was not rural born, an urban born of Nanded, which was a part of Nizam's kingdom. His empire, so to speak, was here. And in that sense, when he came from this area, he grew up in a slum, because the Dalits who left villages and went into cities, they occupied the wasteland, dirty areas and stuff, and then they…
Yeah, I read that in your book,
Right.
About living in a slum in a small tin house. What was your childhood like? Were you an average student or a bright student? Were you a shy boy or a kind of a bully and bold stuff?
No, I was a below average student, I imagine. I was not, I mean, it depends. My average score kept fluctuating, like where when at one point I had a, I never was beyond, I think, 60 or 70%. I don't recall ever getting 80%, unless of course when I was in maybe kindergarten or the first 2 years of life. So my brilliance was somehow plummeted after I started becoming mature. And in 10th I had 66 percentage. In 12th I had 46 percentage. So I was not really, but I was also not shy, but I was an intimidated person because I came from the slum. So there was this fear of somebody calling out, hey, you are a Jebim Nagar person, you live in Ambedkar circle, why are you? So there was always, so that's why sometimes I most often did not open my mouth. I would prefer to just be the way it was. I was not a bully. I was certainly somebody who would fight for his chance, because the chance would not come to me. So I remember doing that, but in a way within my limits, and if I don't get, I would just feel self-defeated. And there are many instances and many people I see now who also have similar kind of experience.
What are all the degrees you acquired, and in which institutions and in which countries?
So after 12th, I secured admission in law school. My father bribed me to go to law school because I was going to go to some science stream, I had absolutely no interest, and also I was not good at it. If you don't have interest, you are not good at it usually. But he then told and he insisted I should study law, and also because that was the only college that could accommodate students under 50% easily. And I imagine because of my caste certificate, I got some concession and I got admitted. And my father bribed me with a motor vehicle. So, thanks to his enticing me to pursue law, it changed my perspective. So, I studied law, bachelor's, 2 law degrees in India. For my master's, so when I graduated with law degree, I was the university topper, one of the 2 toppers we have in 3. I was the 3rd rank. Then I went to Bombay. I secured admission there in LLM, but I left within 1 month or 2 months. I got admission in UK to study LLM there. I got a government of Maharashtra scholarship given for scheduled caste students. I took that, and then after that I went to work for UN briefly, and then I went to South Africa to pursue my PhD in anthropology. I finished that degree, and I was in South Africa.
How did you finance the studies other than the scholarship of the eligible for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes?
So for my next degree, there was the university sponsored me.
Okay.
The department so there was a global call, and accordingly I was shortlisted and they paid for it. But also that was not sufficient. They cancelled the fellowship, so I had to go hunting for my own fellowship, and that's when I requested the government of Maharashtra again. But the rule was that once you get scholarship, you can go. But somehow the local officers, and I really credit them, the scheduled caste officers, most of them I think must be IAS and somebody from the state services. I think their commitment must have to be appreciated. Not only them, but there was also, like, my father went and lobbied, and local clerical staff also, because they had then I think 50 seats, and 50 seats would never be filled. So the vacancies were going. So they created a new GR. They say if there is a vacancy, and the student who has been who has secured who availed the scholarship first, and if he is securing admission to a higher degree than it is, then we should. Because of that, my father went and started talking to people in the Mantralaya secretariat, and then with me there was another fellow who had secured admission in Berkeley University. Both of us got benefit. Now it's a very good standard.
How many hours do you spend reading?
Depends, these days, I mean, I should say not as much
as a student, I mean, as a scholar.
When I was studying into my PhD. So most of the days, I mean, they would start with reading something, because in academic work, you have to keep updated with old whatever writings are and what's new. And there is always like a standard timeline where you read and then you make list of what I'm going to read next, what I'm going to read next. So pretty much not hours, but always you keep reading. And then it was advised to us that don't get sucked into it, which was very good advice. The outgoing PhD students told me that enjoy, because they were finishing their tenure, and the advice they gave to the newcomers, the first timers like me, were that make sure you take breaks. They say you work, because PhD is a professional degree, it's like work. They pay you for doing research. You work so much that Monday to Friday you can just work your ass off. Saturday, Sunday, that's your time. I never adhered to it most of the time. I wish I did, but that was the kind of work schedule and working for so many hours.
Now, why did you not think of civil services and get into this scholarly pursuit?
Yeah, you know, somehow I was never interested. For some reason, I was interested in army because I went to NCC, and my father had this martial race theory encoded in his, because people from the scheduled caste community, most of them, Dr. Ambedkar also wrote, are from traditional warrior clan. So he wanted me to pursue defense services, and I went also. I couldn't, fortunately, did not clear the interview. I would go to interviews. Last stage, sometimes first stage, they would do the service selection. People around me were studying for civil services. I was never inclined. If it is, it is. If it isn't, it isn't. That was not my. Somehow, I to think about it, like I would never do. My God, it would have been such a tragedy.
So, other than reading books, were you interested in games and music?
Yes, very much so. In fact, my inclination to music started with Marathi music that father would listen on the tape recorder. He would also listen to Osho and his discourses. So, to kind of get thinking about it, it would just run in the background, and Osho is so melodious in his voice. Music in that sense was Marathi, and then I moved to ghazals because my uncle Mama was somebody who was very much, and he got me hooked up to Pakistani ghazal singers. And apart from books, there was, the habit of extra activities was very much sports. I tried almost every sports. I wanted to be like all-rounder, and I never became good in any, but at least I had a good experience of playing all kinds of sports.
Now, you became a star after you wrote the book Caste Matters. What provoked you to write that book?
It's very interesting, So when I went to after Oxford, after my South Africa studies, I was there for 3 years and 8 months or 9 months, or something like that. And then I had an opportunity. I was looking forward to spending at least 1 year or so outside South Africa, because it would have helped my thesis research, because in my university the resources were less, but also the exposure was not adequate. Because if you're writing a good thesis, it's better to discuss that work with world-renowned scholars. And so I was looking forward to, but somehow I was not getting the appropriate funding, because the funding that was there for students to go to Europe or America was for Africans. I was not African. So, and also many times the agenda was not fitting So then I wrote to Harvard and Stanford. Both university professors accepted me. And when I took the funding, I spent like the last year of my PhD was done when I was at Harvard, and I finished my PhD while being a student, while being a visiting student at Harvard. And after that, 1 year I did not tell anybody I was at Harvard. I did not know. I was a little bit afraid. I was a little bit intimidated. I was just not sure. So it took me 1 year to come to terms to celebrate or acknowledge my my presence there. And while I was there, I worked in libraries and other places. Usually, when a scholar finishes his PhD or her PhD, they write a thesis. That thesis is converted into a book.
Correct.
So you get a fellowship to convert that, because thesis is quite a different genre than writing a academic book. So I did that, but I was not interested in the topic I did research on. And I was looking forward to getting back to the area of caste and Ambedkar and the community, Dalits, and so forth. So one day I just realized there was a fellowship at Harvard that I was applying for, and as a process they need you to write a proposal. They need to give you a proposal. Now usually for my job applications I was sending my proposal about the PhDs, because I studied in Africa, I studied African studies, and if I need an admission in Western world, it's preferred for Africans. Why would a non-African get? And so I tried to get position for 1 or 2 years, something like that. Finally, one day in the bus in the Boston misty rain, I just decided I'll do something on caste. And a friend of mine, Paul, he's a Telugu fellow here. He's a Harvard graduate. I called him and I told him I want to do something like this. Very encouraging person. He encouraged me very promptly, and he said, okay, but the topic that I thought about was something I had to write. And so I wrote a proposal. I submitted. I did not get the fellowship, but the professor gave me his own, his discretionary fund as a scholar, as a fellow, through which I then ended up working on this book for nearly 2.5 years.
The title is Caste Matters.
Right.
Now, I see from the book that the title obviously arose when your grandmother was humiliated by the landlady where she was working.
Sir.
For allowing you to use the toilet of the guests.
Huh.
And then you felt that I am lesser than a toilet which is a receptacle of shit.
Sir.
And the next sentence says, that's why caste matters. Now, is that the sort of starting point of thinking that this book should be titled Caste Matters, and obviously the substance of the book would be the same?
The title came at the very end. In fact, I wrote the proposal, and the proposal got accepted, and I sent to publisher. They were also interested to publish, and there were so many things that I was evolving. Now, I wrote a very hardcore academic text, but the publisher said, if you write this academically in the way you want, scholarly, then people will not be able to access it. But I had a little bit difficulty accepting that, and so I had to strike a balance. So Caste Matters was basically a title. I had a few titles. One of them was Caste Souls. I want to think about how soul is cast in the context of us. And when I started scratching the memories of my own experiences, the editor there was also kind of encouraging me. I then realized that this is a really, there's so much thing that I need to talk about. And then I remembered this incident very vaguely, vividly. It was so omnipresent, and then I wrote about it and I shared it with my grandmother eventually, and she remembered. She was still so ashamed that her grandson had to undergo this experience. She never wanted to. It was bygones, and it was embarrassing for us that like my grandson coming from urban area to rural area to my place is undergoing this experience. She wanted to bury. Somehow I got that, and then the notion of why caste matters was because many people don't want to associate caste with their own self, their progress, the society's backwardness, and all of that. And so I had to tell it on the face. And Professor Cornel West, one of my professors, who is now running for a president of America, he has a title called Race Matters. So I told him, hey, listen, I have 2 options, and I gave him, and he said, no, use Caste Matters. And so I was like, okay, because I usually prefer having book titles like 2 words.
Okay.
Easy to read and follow on.
And Race Matters sort of prompted you to think on those lines.
Think around that, yeah.
But when I read the book, since I didn't know all this background, that toilet episode has really made you write that title, and It is a very, very sort of humiliating experience, but at the same time, very touching experience for a reader. In the book, he has dealt with several episodes. Some people readily accept it is a scholarly book. It's a well-researched subject. And some had reservations about your writing about Brahmins against Brahmins. Now, do you believe that they were right in criticizing you for that, or your own experience tells you that a man is good no matter what caste he belongs to, and a man is not good even if he belongs to the so-called low caste?
So it just so happened that idea was not existing in me. I mean, I knew casteist people are terrible people and they will protect, and there's whole Ambedkar also wrote about how right and left and Brahmins, and he was looking at society, and so I was very much. But then I came across a book that was talking about non-Dalit Ambedkar's comrades in Marathi. A friend of mine in New Jersey just gave that copy, and I was reading, and I was like, this is an interesting thing. I need to maybe read. Sometimes you reassess your positions. That was one of the books. And though I am critical of people with the Brahminical privileges and people who are terrible in maintaining the caste system, I also then went and did my research on Ambedkar and especially Phule. And these two were operating, Phule especially was operating in a Peshwa, in the Brahmin Republic, post-Brahmin Republic kind of state. And so there was an evidence that people are doing something, and I wanted to then include that in the book. And I wrote it, and I think the editor of my book might have had some difficulty also. She herself was a Brahmin, and she was of liberal kind who thought, but I think I wrote it, and people are right in the sense that they are speaking from a certain position of their own location, their own experience. And if me saying something that might contradict their own lived experience, then certainly they have right to criticize. And but also people, I think, have not adequately invested in learning about what I am trying to argue, what I am trying to say. I am saying about the were Brahmins who fought against Brahminism, and now it is the responsibility of the younger Brahmins to emulate such Brahmins, to strip themselves of the Brahminical arrogance and serve the society, especially the outcasts who should be leading. But the idea actually of writing this chapter came from when I was in America. The white people, liberals, were thinking about preparing to become anti-racist. I would be surprised to hear such things, and so I attended one of the sessions in December. There was snow. I went through, still I went and I wanted to listen, and I just sat there I was an odd man out there, probably. I was just sitting, and they were discussing how to challenge your own white friends and family members who are arrogantly holding on to caste. That's how kind of the education began in me, and then I started exploring. And so people are, of course, people have criticized from their own position. I am also criticized from my position, but experiences of both the criticizing person and me is more or less the same. They are just not able to amplify. And many times the critique was not against that, the critique was simply against me individually. Sometimes you can just have to make the difference, and I was like, okay. And I told them that I'm not putting Brahmins on my forehead. I'm not putting them. I am putting them as somebody who needs to do the right thing, and they need to go. And I want to encourage the younger Brahmins to be an anti-caste person. And there are so many evidences. There would have been no social welfare residential schools in Andhra Pradesh had there not be a Brahmin person who would have chaperoned it. your friend himself, Shankaran. And there are so many evidences like that. And so we have to create space for such people in our history as well to recognize and acknowledge.
No, you see, in your own life, you come across people who are the villains in the general sense of Brahmin being prejudiced against the
Right.
scheduled castes or the Dalits.
Right.
But in your personal life, your experience could be different in certain circumstances. Now, when I was in 10th class, a Brahmin teacher made me stand up and said, "You're the best student I have in the class." He's English teacher. So the first person who spotted me and made it public in the school is a Brahmin. Similarly, when I was in my BA, another Brahmin teacher, after the second year semester examination, he named two people, one of them me, and he said, "There are only two people in the class who know English, that is you and Durgarao." Now, how did it happen? Both happened to be Brahmins. But the same type of Brahmins who were sitting in the scholarship section, they humiliated us. They misbehaved with us, they were rude to us. So there is good and bad element or persons in any community. There are people among Dalit communities who have not been as committed as some of our great leaders are. But that doesn't mean that all the Dalits are bad fellows. That doesn't mean all the Brahmins are good fellows.
Right.
So I feel that this is not an issue of a whole caste being that, but it is the Brahminism that is the issue, not so much the Brahmin.
Right.
Brahminism is different from Brahmin as a person. There are any number of Brahmins among Dalits who worship gods who said we can't enter the temples. So in that sense, I agree with you that there are Brahmins who fought against the Brahmins. But if some people are not happy with it, they are free to criticize you and...
what I did was essentially, even I was prejudiced, and I think I still am. But as a scholar, as a researcher, when you do research and there are certain evidences you meet, you have to be fair to that. You cannot have over biases in that. And this is one of my honest reflections, my honest interventions in my own scholarship. And that's why you will see the chapter Brahmins against Brahminism. And I still criticize Brahmins even now. My critique is, but when we individualize that question, it becomes different than a societal question. My approach is societal more, less individual. And I think that's how a sincere writing has to take place.
But do you avoid such people who criticize you for that kind of...
No.
you just ignore?
No, so first of all, it was new experience for me too. So I was also getting very much affected by it. I would be very concerned. I wanted to debate, I want to talk. Sometimes people, I thought, which was true, were not understanding what I'm trying to say. Many of them had made an opinion because they had read about, somebody told them about me or the writings. They have themselves not approached. And it is normal for, we cannot expect everybody to read every page of it and make an opinion. And so there was some stage where I was really getting affected, I was really getting angry, and I was like, or I was getting a little bit feeling sad for people who are not understanding. But then eventually, as I was talking and interacting, as I was more learning, the answer was that, don't bother about them. Let them be what they would like to be. And it's difficult to say than doing it. It will still affect and impact, but then there's some point, at some point, then you just like, you can't do anything.
Did you think about Ambedkar,
Hmm.
who sort of attacked only Brahminism and not
Yeah.
Brahmins?
Yeah.
He did that himself.
Yeah.
And later on, you developed interest in Buddhism.
Yeah.
How did it come about?
No, I think that's interesting because Buddhism or Buddha was always around, but the interest was not really strong. I mean, it was, but it was. I was because I was somebody who then, when my coming of age, I became a staunch atheist, and I was free. I was very relaxed, not having to follow any religious rituals, modules, fasting, nothing doing. You just live your life. What your rational says, what the temperament is, you just be with that. So it was a very great experience. And then Buddhism, like I have had friends around me who would encourage me. Sometimes people would criticize me for not taking Buddhism seriously. And so there were all kinds of evidence. People would sometimes put me down for saying, I'm not invoking as much. So it went through stages, but then, that interest in a way was there because of Ambedkar. And Ambedkar's work was very much inspired from Buddhist thought. And as we have evidence from the new biographies that are coming, how he was driven by it. My Buddhist enterprise started with this kind of, and I attended some. I was looking. It's just that I want to look at like what's there. Of course, it's a great remedy for human miseries, individual miseries. It's a very good compact expansion experience. And if you look at Buddhism through an Ambedkarite Buddhist sense, the way he called Navayana, it's liberatory. It's a liberation theology that he has offered, where I was attending a Buddhist conference in Hyderabad a few days ago, where they are taking out a yatra. It's called Ashok Ambedkar Dhamma Yatra, centralizing Ashoka in this. And I was listening to the speakers, and one forest service officer, retired, Dange, was telling how Buddhism for Ambedkar was a democratic experiment. The things he couldn't do in Constitution, he did it with Buddhism. And I found it profoundly political. So it's not just spiritual practice for us. It's also for me, it's a historical experience, it's ancestral, it has to do with finding the cues of our pride, our existence, our honor in that. And it's such a vast field, and one cannot but just acknowledge the greatness of an enlightened person. Enlightenment is not easy, it's not cheap, it's not sudden for one person. People need that experience. So
that reminds me of Kancha Elias' book,
Yeah.
Buddha as a Political Philosopher. You heard of it much later?
yes, when he published that, I think he wrote that as a thesis for his PhD. Yeah.
Okay. Now, what are your interests in general?
These days, because of the internet and social media, the interest is just centering around that only, which is very sad. My interest is to be away from technology and doing things. One of my interests is
I am more blessed. I can't understand technology.
which is the best thing, and that's why you can do so many things. People who are arrested in technology, it's a very dangerous jail, and I think now I'm developing aversion to it, which is a good thing, because I don't want to. Sometimes when because I travel a lot, and so in the journey I'm just staring at my phone, doing something.
Whereas otherwise you would have been reading a book.
Yes, or even look outside, wonderful mountains and trees, and there's so many things. I sometimes realize that, oh my God, I'm going through a very beautiful part of the city, I should look outside. But I'm so invested in looking at the screen. So the interests are, I like traveling, I like cooking, I like watching movies. But I need a very proper setup to watch movies, and I'm very selective about what kind of movies. I am very I'm not generous with the film. I look it as art, and think about the politics and nature of story writing and that elements. I like visiting new places and excavating history. My interest is developing in unknown histories and archaeology. If I ever get a chance to do something with the government, I think I'll prefer doing with archaeology department. That's where there's so much things, so much excavations, and there's so much speculation, and there's so much to decipher.
But do you need government support for that? You could be on your own.
I mean, I can do my own archaeological research. What I'm saying is, like, I would like to sponsor much more projects
Right.
around the Indian historical past, which is such a great rich history, and also look at pre-Buddhist, pre-Vedas, pre-Aryan history. We know there is this Indus civilization. We know now there is a civilization down near Madurai in the in the Sangam era. So there is a lot of historical evidences, and so the curiosity, the speculation, the newness, the unknown, and the whole investment. It's a fun, and also enjoy writing. My interest, apart from, writing is a great exercise. But if you do writing as a work as opposed to writing as something came to my mind, and I want to write, and then you enjoy that process. It's like once you finish, you don't. Oh, I did something good.
There are broadly 3 or 4 discriminations. One obviously is the first one is the gender
Right.
discrimination. Second is racial, which affects a whole continent. And then you have the religious discrimination. These are common for all countries.
Yeah.
But India is the only country where we have added one more discrimination of equal unfairness and cruelty, that is caste discrimination. Now, which of these 4 consume you more?
I think caste and race. I think about it quite closely. I try to draw parallels. I try to think about the differences and the nuances of both of the systems, and I try to take out some knowledge out of it. So there is a question about how race and caste manifest in the world, and these are twin towers of human societies at the moment, where they are impacting more than 1 billion people, and it really needs sustained focus. So I'm trying to now develop my own sense of knowledge and understanding about these topics.
But did you notice of late there's one more form of discrimination or exploitation, that is the economic discrimination, the poor versus the rich.
Right.
Those who are below the poverty line, those who are so rich that there is nothing they can't afford, and they stop short of nothing in acquiring more and more at the expense of the unfortunate workers.
Right.
Now, does that do you pay attention to that aspect of what should be done to stop this inequality? Because your constitution talks about
Sir.
equality.
Sure.
And today particularly India is producing billionaires instead of Nobel laureates. So what are your sort of your take on how to sort of minimize this inequality?
We need to have a balance where the have-nots and the people who have is a growing divide. The economic duress that has brought through this new economic policies across the world is really keeping human being as an instrument to reach the ends. Human being itself is not an end. It's used as an instrument to serve other human beings. And there is a hierarchy, strong hierarchy of the human beings. What human beings are, what kind of facilities they have, what kind of disadvantages they have, and it's a terrible consequence that we have seen. We have to, when I was in South Africa, it was then the world's most unequal country among the. And then that creates much more opportunity for people exploring criminal avenues or anti-social kind of ways of finding out. And I've noticed that happening quite frequently. As they say, if the poor have nothing to eat, he will eat the rich. And then the famous leftist slogan is "Eat the rich." It's a call for action for people. The economic divide, when it becomes part of our culture, it makes it appear as race or caste. Economic divide, when it becomes part of your religion, it makes it appear race and caste.
Has economic divide been a part of the religion?
Very much so. I mean, religion again is an instrument. Religion, the purpose of religion is to have a thrift shop as much as it's like a mall. Whatever products you can buy to get access to the divine. And you are not necessarily always seeking the spiritual divine, you are seeking a material divinity. People in Tirumala, Tirupati here, why do they go? They are not going there because they believe in the God for their own selfless sacrifice. They are there because they want something in return. No person goes to any God without expecting anything in return.
Except probably poor man.
Even poor man wants something from the God. Dhamma, on the other side, is for you to not say there is somebody who is going to offer you something. It's asking you to strengthen yourself. It's giving you tools to stand on your feet. It's giving you tools to be more confident and not rely on some mythical character by closing eyes or praying and worshipping and finding solutions to themselves.
What are your future plans?
The future keeps changing so many times that it's difficult to have one plan, and that's why I like you say plans. There are a few plans that better not to be disclosed. There are few plans better to be disclosed. The disclosable plans is to be part of to continue in the academia, to continue the scholarly research and providing necessary support to the world on their question of thinking about caste and race and Dalits and other marginalized communities, and also use my knowledge and education for the welfare of the society. India is still very much a focus, but I work across many parts of the world. So creating solidarity amongst themselves. I want to actually, there are 3 projects that I really would like to have one research assistant, but I would like to work on. One is, the immediate plan is to have Bahujan Library. Bahujan Library is an online repository of whatever is out there, the Bahujan community literature, the anti-caste, anti-Brahminical literature, right from the era of ancient times to the contemporary, make it freely accessible for people. Digital archive is what we are. We started work already. We are trying to compile every writing that is out there that has covered question of caste, marginalizations, Dalit, Adivasi, the backward castes, other Brahminical castes as well. Second project I'm hoping to start soon is Dalit biographies. There are so many incredible people from the Dalit community across India and beyond, in South Asia and also now in the Western and non-Western world, who have done incredible work in their life. Not just social work, but whatever work they have done. They were a good, if they were an engineer, the idea came to me because I saw some black biographies project done by my professor, but also I saw in Texas, USA, there is one man, Jagdish. I went to his home for some event and I was sleeping at his place, and I saw that underneath the TV there was something that was there, like, and it kept bothering me what it is. Like, so I asked him, what is this thing? He says, that's my patent. He had a certificate or something of that. So he had done research, or he had acquired patent about 2 or 3. JP Morgan, the bank, investing bank, uses his research innovation in their own products. I was like, how incredible and inspiring story is that? And so as I kept exploring more and more, there are so many people, known, unknown, in big cities, small cities. So I have to create a unique ID, digital ID of those incredible Dalit individuals, so that we can have a digital memory of them, and we don't want to forget them. They have done good work in different parts, and it's also inspiration for people to see.
What's the most joyous and sad event of your life?
No, sometimes it's it takes a memory lane. I mean, saddest event is so subjective and it's so relative that as if it's a competition of sadness in life, that something else comes and replaces that. Joyous moment is when I told my father that I got into Harvard, and he was in hospital, his deathbed, when he heard that. And he knew, because he knew about Harvard through Barack Obama was there, and Barack Obama, as you would know, all of us celebrated his victory of the oppressed across the world, and probably that is one of my joyous moments to deliver that message to father. And he is happy, and he's weak, he's meek, he's going to operation that evening, but or the later, and then he listens to it. The saddest moment, rather not saddest but sad moment, one of the many, is that the father is not here to see what he has done, because the things he was an incredibly, a peon in a bank, but would want me to spend time with literature and books, and would not compromise on principles and values, really stick by it. And that was really a pain for people like me. The children always have that, as you have had sunstrokes in your, and I would feel, why would a father do this? But what he was really doing was, he was cultivating that ethics in us. It's only at the later time. And now, he would write to newspaper letters, Marathi letter, newspaper, small local, about some issues or appreciating something. But now his son writes in India's leading newspapers, and what a joy would have been for him to see and read, and somebody who would be, he would be somebody who would be intellectually arguing with me. So it's a sad part, but also it's the realist part. It's the law of the nature, and it's the most truthful experience.
Do you regret any of your decisions or actions?
Oh yeah. I don't think a man who has a regret has truly committed to his desires. The regrets are such that I wish I would have listened to my father more. Like he wanted me to, for example, learn how to sing or how to play some musical instruments. And now, excuse me, with so much work happening, I wish if I had access to that, that would have been a very good, relaxing, and also new kind of innovating exercises that I would have done. Regrets is mostly concerning my own decisions. Sometimes when I was trying to, let's say, pursue education, I wish I would have followed the advice of people who were giving it properly. But also, that maybe I wish I would not have done things the way that impact people in a way. So, I mean, these are so difficult questions. Like something happens and you hit and miss, and you are like, yes, that I wish this didn't happen. So I wish is so much less.
Your hairstyle is very interesting. How did it happen?
Well, I have, this is my natural hair, but I come from a culture in India. The hero in cinema will not have hair like this. Either the criminal will have, the thug will have something to not appreciate. So I was also living with that self-hatred. My mother has beautiful curly wavy hair, and her mother and as well as father has similar hair. I didn't meet her father, but in photo you can see. And then when I went to Africa during my final third, fourth year, second, third year, I saw black people appreciating my hair, black elderly women saying so nice hair, black women saying, and I was like, this is really a beauty. I mean, the thing I was taught to hate myself is really a aspired thing in different part of the world. And
you hated your hairstyle. You said you hate.
Oh, I hated my hair. If you see my old photographs, they are like a military.
Okay.
Because they were not like wavy. They were not wavy. They were not like the one you see like easily comb, and it was not. It was just what I would think ugly curly hair. But then it took me some time, and it's also my statement that I'm admiring my mother and my grandmother, and also I am embracing it. And I'm setting up new style, and now people follow, youngsters follow me, and they are not ashamed of this.
Would you like to be an international citizen or come back to India?
I think the international citizenship is a preferred choice so far, not least only for me, but also from the community, because they don't see people, many like me, having access to different areas and different countries and different domains. So it is preferred, but India is certainly, the more I am thinking about it, the more I am getting invested in India, its social setup, the politics, various agendas that are happening here. And so while being international citizen, I will maintain my Indian passport. That means that will give an assurance that I will still be attached to India and invested here.
Okay. All the best.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for joining us here.
Thank you,
All the best
sir.
to
Thank
you.
you, sir.
Friends, here we heard like Suraj Engde, whom I fondly call him as Suraj, and we have seen various facets of his life. He's hardly 34, 35 years now, but has distinguished himself as a great scholar without losing touch with his humble background, both social and economic, poverty and the Dalit origin. And is a kind of a person who would bring us a lot of joy and pride that one of our fellow Dalits has become such a an eminent scholar in the world. We would be sort of doing some more such interviews of eminent persons, and for that keep watching the Master Key and Sneha for some more such episodes and interviews.
Like, share and subscribe Master Key TV.